Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to bring you John Lese today. We're going to talk virtual events. So I hope my event planners, whether you're tuning in live, I'm so happy to see you and meet with you and engage with you. If you're watching this later, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. With no further ado, I want to get into what we're doing today and introduce you to Mr. Jonathan Lese. John's motto is, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. John is a strategic event management and field marketing leader with a passion for delivering results that support your business objectives. Throughout his career, John has led event teams to set business objectives and measure results. He has had success building strategies, creating roadmaps, and driving metrics for Fortune 500 companies, and helps companies identify opportunities, develop concepts, create metrics, produce plans, and bring ideas to life. Along the way, he recommends ways to streamline processes, improve event efficiencies, enhance lead management, and CRM integration. So important these days, as well as create and evaluate metrics. John has built strategic meeting management programs, developed processes to consistently manage event programs, and reduced event management costs by over $1 million for his clients. John loves working with teams and enjoys showing how events can impact and support a company's bottom line. In his free time, he also loves to ski. Without further ado, thank you, John. Welcome, welcome. I really appreciate you being on with me today. John is a fellow MPI member of our local chapter, Westfield chapter, and a board member. So thank you for all you do for our community.
Great to be here. It's really nice. Thank you for that great introduction, and looking forward to having a great chat.
All right, beautiful. So let's get right into it. You know, a couple of the goals that we want to hit today, getting familiar with platforms and tools, understanding how to plan a virtual meeting, and the best practice for organizers and attendees. So let's sort of hit that in reverse order. What are the best practices for somebody that is looking to take their previously scheduled live meeting, because we are in the pandemic era, generation pandemic here, right? So it is May 2020, and we don't know what attendees and participants really want to do, but we do want to take advantage of the tools that are out there, bring people together, collaborate. I'm a big proponent of the idea that yes, it is challenging that we can't meet in person, but there are opportunities for things that we can do virtually that we couldn't do live. So talk to us about, as people are sort of getting into this mode of either taking advantage of the virtual landscape or transitioning from a live meeting to a virtual one, what are some of the best practices? What are some of the things that you walk clients through in terms of the process to get to that point where they're actually going to create their virtual meeting?
So the good news is that the planning of a virtual meeting and a live meeting are relatively similar. Yes, there's some differences, some significant differences, but the bottom line is why are we doing this event? And that's really the key question we have to ask. What are our objectives? What are we trying to accomplish? Because you can't really select the right platform for digital unless you really know what you want to do. There's over 70 platforms out there. There's plenty of streaming services. So there's so many different things you can do. But if you don't know why you're doing it and what you're trying to accomplish, you can't really select the right platform. And that means, do we need breakout sessions? Do we need speakers in each of those breakout rooms? Do we need to have chat rooms? Do we need to have social networking rooms? Or is it just somebody speaking? And there's different platforms. You don't need to spend a lot of money on a large platform if it's just going to be a panel on the screen and just a little bit of chit chat. But the key to a successful virtual meeting is the ability to engage the audience. Because as you know, if you're sitting here at home and you're watching this, your phone might ring, the kids might scream, the dog might be barking. You've got a lot of different distractions. So if you can really focus on keeping the information relevant, engaging people so that they want to be there and want to participate, then you're really going to have a successful digital or virtual event. And I think the best practice is really to understand the why, then to develop the who you're going to reach and what's the best way to reach those people, and then you can come up with the right platform.
Yeah, I love that. What do you think some of the right whys are for taking a meeting virtual right now? What are some good case points or with the folks that you're working with? I know we can point to what we're doing with our MPI Westfield chapter is a great example, but what are some of the whys that you think people should be looking at if they're actually looking to get into the virtual event space?
Well, certainly, why do we want to do this? Are we trying to educate people? Is there something we want? What do we want them to take away from our program? That's really the first question you want to ask. And that question could be, we want to educate them on a specific subject. Okay. And then if that's the case, then you have to say, okay, what is it we want them to do? So I want you to learn how to create a virtual event so that you can host a virtual event within 90 days of this webinar. Okay.
Right.
So then there's something really tangible. It's a smart objective, right? I'm going to be able to go out and find out if somebody actually was able to measure, if somebody was actually able to do an online event, and what the success of that rate was. So I think, that's one thing, right? And then there's another one about engaging people, right? Building relationships. A lot of people in business, you want to buy from somebody you like, you trust, you feel good with. So we want to have the opportunity to build relationships. So again, how many meetings can we set up during a virtual conference, right? There's no reason why you can't do that, and why you can't have people connecting online. And what's great about a virtual meeting is that you have so much data, more data than you would ever have in a live meeting. And that's knowing how many people came on board, how many people registered, where did they go when they were on, if they went to different sessions, who were they listening to, who were they connecting with, how long did they stay, how many downloads did they do? So, you can get this information, whether you use it for a virtual event next year or for your live event in the future. You really have some really good data points that can be used to analyze the success as well as help prepare for the future.
Yeah, I think that's great. And one of the things, that right away sparks me is that engagement piece, because you start talking to me about, okay, we're going to host something where we can learn something. I'm like, okay, why am I not tuning in to YouTube? Just put it out there as content and make that a part of your company's social strategy. I feel the pain of colleagues right now that are sitting through all day Zoom webinars with, their company doing trainings. It just seems like cruel and unusual punishment for those who know who I'm talking about, but the idea that when we go online, we're doing something that's engaging people, that we're collaborating. That to me is the reason, the why to have a virtual online meeting where you're utilizing some sort of platform that allows for engagement. Zoom right now is sort of the gorilla in the room, or elephant in the room, so to speak, because everything is Zoom, right? Are you going to the Zoom meeting? Zoom fatigue. So a lot of these virtual platforms are being held up to the Zoom standard. Does this do what Zoom does? Does it do it better than Zoom does? Does it have features that Zoom doesn't have? So in terms of talking about platforms and tools and collaboration, what are your thoughts on what people should be looking at in order to create an engaging meeting where people can actually engage with each other and learn from each other?
It's funny what you were saying about Zoom. For those of us old enough to know, we used to say when we wanted to make a copy, we'd make a Xerox. And of course, that's the brand. Really, what we're doing is making the copy. And now Zoom is sort of the word used for like the generic, we're going to do an online meeting. But really the key tools out there, there's so many different tools that we can talk about. But in my mind, it's not just engagement, but it's about building this sense of community. How do people talk? And we know, first of all, let's take a step back here, because we know events will come back. It may take a while, but they may come back. Right now, we're probably almost 100% virtual. And at some point, it's going to tip and we're going to start to go back to live events, but probably not 100% live. there'll always be this hybrid option. And I think that's really, we have to take a look at that too, because there's a couple of really important things, and then I'll get into some of the tools and platforms. But when you're online, you immediately open the door to anybody who to attend. So in the past, not everybody could go to a trade show, right? We have budget cuts. We have to watch our travel. Maybe they couldn't go international, whatever the case was. We could only get a few people to go. Plus, going in person is rather expensive. So now, if you have the in-person option and you have this hybrid option of being able to be part of it online, you've now opened the door to many more people. And just a quick example, AACR, which is the American Association for Cancer Research, they did a quick pivot. Their event was at the end of April, and they usually get 23,000 people to their program. This year, going virtual, they had 61,000 people attend. Now, of course, it was free, and so you have to look at it that way, but still, that's almost 3 times the number of people participating. So I think what we have to think about when we go hybrid is we're probably going to get more people than we think. And that's good because you're opening your brand, you're being more global. Also, it's being recorded, so the content is available for a very long time, and it can be on a website. It can be edited into smaller bits and repurposed. So there's a lot of good opportunity there. So I think when you start to look at the different platforms, now you've got to start to think about, what do I really need? And then you can look at, if you're looking at maybe a online trade show, for example, maybe you look at something like On24 or Big Marker. Those companies are large and they're able to have breakouts and huge bandwidth. I mean, you think about the bandwidth for 61,000 people. They had 24,000 people at AACR at their plenary session, the main session. That's more than everyone attending at one time in the past. So you need to make sure there's bandwidth. You need to make sure that they have that capability to not have that delay or buffering going on, or, which can frustrate people. So you have to really look at that. And companies like On24 or Socio.events or Big Marker and so many others are out there, and we can provide a document with a list of all the different companies, but there's no magic pill. And that's the one thing we have to make sure everyone understands is there's no one size fits all. Everyone is a little different.
I appreciate that. I'm doing these live broadcasts sometimes up to 3, even 4 times a day sometimes. And, I'm running into the challenges with folks that aren't savvy on their end with not knowing how to do camera setup. So you're talking about production quality and the strategy around there. And I'm just doing live interviews and conversations like this right now, and those can be pretty complicated in some cases. And even on my end with lag, in the video, we had a great interview just a couple of days with one of my alumni from A. Philip Randolph Campus High School, the nonprofit that I work with, soundbusiness.org. We have an alumni connections project, and I'm watching, the live broadcast play back and my own audio, and I have a pretty good setup. We were talking about before we're going on, Ethernet cable and should I use the headphones and, all that kind of stuff, which are the technical details, which are a part of every virtual event that you do. I'm sort of curious how you are learning about this and approaching this. Certainly for me, it's creating a checklist, trying to make sure that I have the folks that I'm working with. Not only am I sending them a list because I know they're not going to read it, right? When they book the interview, I have information, so I know that that's there. So I provided it. So I'm, CYA, I told you, right? But then I'm finding that I also have to follow up with people, even scheduling pre-events and run-throughs just to do a simple interview, just to make sure that the production quality on both ends, because it's not like a live event where I control the space somebody's walking into. I can be as set up as I want to be, but I'm dependent on the other person for the quality on their end of the live stream.
Mhm.
There's also another way to go about it. You can pre-record things. You can work with AV companies. Obviously, budgetary, restrictions. But if you're working in the larger event and corporate environment, that becomes a little bit easier to work with. So I'm just wondering, especially with these larger meetings, but also, for event professionals like us that are just trying to get into this space, increase their digital profile, maybe start out with some smaller events. What are some strategies that you would sort of suggest people to get into this space? And then, sort of, I'm setting up a lot for you to talk about, but as you move into the larger piece, what are the extra tools that you need to make sure that the production quality is where it needs to be?
Yeah. So I think when we think about virtual, probably the number one concern or is going to be the sound, the audio. People might put up with some bad video if it's not great, but if the audio is not sound and solid, they're probably going to just leave. So I think that's really important. And there's a number of different things you can do. And it depends on budget. It depends on the type of programming you have. But one is you can send a kit, right? You can put together a microphone, you can put together lights, you can put together a backdrop, you can do a number of different things and send that out to your speakers. So if you have multiple speakers, you could send all of that to each one of them. And to be honest, for under $1,000, if maybe even $500, you can do a green screen microphone and some inexpensive lights so that there's some consistency across the board. Then with the green screen and that backdrop, you can then add in relevant images in the background so that everyone might have the event logo or something specific or their name in the same way so that it's consistent across the board. And I think that's like a really good way to make things consistent across the board. The other thing is, again, I have my microphone right here, right? Amazon, it's real inexpensive and it just plugs in and works. It's even for somebody who's not very tech savvy. This was pretty easy. I just basically plugged it in and it worked, which is great. And it really improves the sound quality, which I think is really critical. So hopefully people are noticing there's a good sound out there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then, I think, again, that consistency and quality is really the key point here is people, again, will listen and they might multitask, but as long as the audio quality is there, they'll be engaged, at least they're listening. And then if the video quality is not good, that's a problem, but it's not the end of the world. And then the other thing too and you mentioned this very briefly, is that even if you're doing this live, you still should have a backup, a rehearsed backup. So just in case the internet goes down or there's a problem, you can then put the interview up on screen or if it's a presentation on screen. So that it's not a bad idea to have that backup. The other thing too is because you mentioned internet quality, for the most part, people should be plugging into their Wi-Fi systems, not doing Wi-Fi, or plugging into their routers, not using Wi-Fi. Because again, Wi-Fi is great when it works, but sometimes, if you're not in direct line of your Wi-Fi, if you're not too close to it, it may not work. So you're needing to have a lot of backups because if something does happen, and we're event people, we know things do happen and will happen, then you have that ability to go to the backup and not lose everything.
That's awesome. I just threw up into the comments just a link just to a article online about some great microphones to use. I'm probably going to get a new microphone because I haven't been super happy with my microphone. I got a text call today that's with a pro to sort of look at my setup and see what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. I think that is such a big deal. And I love that you pointed to the audio because a lot of people are obsessed over their video and what it looks like. And I think you're absolutely right. If the audio isn't 100%. If it's choppy, people are going to sign off and not be engaged. Audio is such an important piece of the game. One of the things that I've done to enhance the audio profile of the show is I went to Fiverr.com and created a theme song. So in terms of production quality, I think there's a lot of tools and tricks out there that you can utilize to enhance the audio profile of your event. You can really bring up the value and production level of your event by just simply looking at the audio, looking at the things that can do to enhance your event. And it goes back to what you were saying before in terms of if you've planned a live event, a virtual event isn't that much different. How are you engaging people? You know, it's difficult to engage people's olfactory senses, their sense of smell virtually, but what are they seeing? What are they hearing? You know, what feeling, what can they touch? You know, can you send them a virtual care package so that maybe you can send something that they can smell during the meeting? Like I've gotten a care package for a virtual meeting where they sent coffee beans, a cup that actually you could make the coffee in with the coffee beans, a beautiful action item pad so that you could take action on the event that you are hosting, packaged with cards. So there was things that I could touch, I could feel, I could smell, and really engage with in the meeting, which I thought was wonderful. So there are strategies for you to do it. Now, obviously, this gets into the money side of it and the monetization side of it. So let's talk about that a little bit. For folks that are looking to move into the space, what are some of the success stories that you're seeing around monetization so that, you know, our event planners and our companies that are getting into this space can actually pay for these meetings and make them worthwhile?
Yeah, it's some really good points, right? The monetization and ROI is really, really critical moving forward. And I think, you know, right now, the things that have happened in the last 3 months, we're just now starting to see some of that. And, you know, I look at something like AACR as a great example, and only because they've been reporting their statistics. You know, they've really, well, again, that was free. They had sponsors that helped cover some of those costs. And the fact that they were able to get 61,000 people, that's a lot more people seeing sponsorships. So they have an opportunity in the future to perhaps monetize that even more. I also think that because of the situation being on lockdown, a lot of these companies have opened their events to be free. And in the future, probably starting in the fall, we're not going to see that anymore. There'll be if we do in person in the fall, there'll be an in-person price, and there's probably going to be an online price. And the online price might be a little cheaper because you're not there in person. You don't have the food and beverage. You don't have the space and as much space needed on site. So again, the online might be less, but we have to take into account that we can't do these for free, and they won't be for free all the time. So I think you got to look at again, the opportunities out there for sponsorship. So for example, you mentioned some of the engagement tips. I was on a program the other night where we learned how to make pizza. How great, right? You know, dough, the roller, everything. And we were all really engaged, and everybody had their glass of wine, and that was really fun. And everyone's laughing and joking around, and people are commenting, you know, how they messed up and showing their pizzas that didn't come out as well as others. And you know, that was like a great sense of community. We were all event planners. We were all doing this together, all having a good time. You know, that's worth something to a sponsor, right? Whether whoever that might have been. In this case, there wasn't one, but there's an opportunity to do that. And I think that's where, you know, you're going to get that. And you have to look at it too, that look, we may not be able to charge $900 to be online. However, we might be charging, maybe it's a couple $100, but if you get like an AACR 3 times the number of people, you're going to make that money back in quantity because you'll have so many more people.
Yeah,
the other one
love this point. Yeah, go ahead.
And one last thing too, I want to talk about is BookCon, but we can do that on the next session. Go ahead and ask your
Cool.
question.
So no, so this is the thing that I was going to talk about pricing. So, when you look at the cost for doing virtual, in a lot of cases, they can be just as high as doing a live event. When you get into, the event production aspect of it, making sure that the presentations are the same level of production value, booking the online platform that allows you to do everything securely and reliably for your attendees, you're looking at some high costs. So in terms of the pricing for your online events and in the conversations that I've had with my meeting partners and with clients, we've talked about, in some cases, not lowering the price at all from, in an event where we transitioned from live to virtual. And the reason that we weren't going to lower the price at all was because for a lot of the events that we're doing, especially on the high level where it's connecting business leaders, foundation folks, they are attending the meeting to engage with the folks that attend that meeting. Mm-hmm. So the price on the door is not because they're getting a lunch or a break or a cup of coffee. The price on the door is for access. And when you're providing high level content, high level engagement, high level opportunities for you to engage with folks in your particular industry or desired field, in this case, we could be talking about venture capitalists with tech entrepreneurs. We could be talking about foundation CEOs with the actual finance folks that they want to be connected to most. Lots of different angles on this, but it's understanding that as we move and with the opportunities that we create, and we've talked about everything from the idea that, in a live event, if I have somebody like a Tony Robbins or a Gary Vee or Oprah that is lined up to speak at the event, the one-on-one digital opportunities that we can create for attendees might be a lot more impactful. So I put John in a room with Oprah, and he loves Oprah. He gets his picture with Oprah. As he comes into the room, Oprah's already been briefed on who John is. Oh, John, I'd love to see your work on Grow Your Events. I love the fact that you ski. I love to ski too. Please tell me about da. You're already engaged. You're in that moment. You have your photo opportunity that you can use for other things that are going on in your professional and personal life. It's just an amazing opportunity that you might not have been able to create in a live in-person event. So there are opportunities there that you can create that are very high value that we can take advantage of. In terms of tools and strategies along those lines, what are you seeing in terms of opportunities that you can create that a live event wouldn't allow for?
Well, first of all, just to go back to the budget, I just want to be very clear that just because it's virtual doesn't mean it's going to be less expensive to put on. There's still a lot of costs that are similar, right? We need to make sure we have good AV company, a good streaming platform, a good platform in general to host and manage the program. But what's really important, and perhaps almost as important as everything else, is you need to have a good MC. There's got to be somebody out there who can help bridge the gap, talk between the events, really kind of keep people engaged. And a good MC can really sort of make or break your event. And I think that's something that we don't see in a live program, is we really don't see an MC because, the session ends, people leave, they go to the next one and so forth. But when you're online, there's a need for that. Somebody to connect the dots, somebody to kind of take a break. Hey, we're going to have a 15-minute break now. Come back and we'll talk to Cameron about his staffing company, whatever that is. But the fact is that MC can really help drive engagement and talk about, okay, you know what, we're going to do a poll now, and then they can do that. And also, while the people are speaking, and this is probably what you're doing right now, Cameron, is you're checking the chat box to see if there's any questions or things going on so that you can then ask the right question moving on. And I don't have to do that, and I just wait for you to ask me the question, and we go. So I think that's something that's really, really important that we don't see as much in a live event as we would here. So certainly that's something that's critical. I also feel like what's missing a lot in an in-person event, while you are there to network and you're there to meet people, when you go to a networking event, you pretty much have to go and find the people you want to talk to. You're looking at name badges, and you may not know the person, or maybe you've seen his picture or her picture online and you want to try to connect. So you're trying to look around the room to find them. But online, I can just go and right to the profile, and I can say, hey, Cameron, I'd like to connect with you. Can we spend a few minutes chatting at maybe our networking event later on this evening? And that connection is made, and it's much easier and to connect on that virtual side, because you're not having to do the searching at an event where there might be 500 people. So I think that's
absolutely.
like really good.
I love the fact we've done it with our 12 p.m. lunch bunch, MPI Westfield, which I took that format from Master Networks that started it and just brought it over to MPI. The ability to break out people on Zoom, which, then again, going back to this conversation, we do it on Zoom. Can this other platform do it? And we've definitely had that conversation multiple times over. We go and we look at a platform like Socio, or we look at, platform like On24, or, new platforms that are in development like welcomeonline.co. And one of the first questions is, can we do these breakouts? Can we do that? I looked at this platform called shindig.com, which was one of the coolest platforms that I saw. And I actually have some ideas around doing basically online concerts and bring your date dances, because you can do a very high level stream, and the person that is running the event or performing can see all the attendees. But one of the cool things about Shindig that I haven't seen on any other platform is you can have a separate side conversation with another attendee. So whether that person lives in the house next door, or you're in New York and they're in San Francisco, you can act like you're sitting right there next to them in a chair, or right there on the dance floor of the event, and have a conversation. You can lower the volume of the presenter. You can heighten the level of the presenter for yourself in that meeting. So it's a really cool platform and tool. So again, it brings people to the table. And going back to an earlier point, where I would have put on online or in-person event, and maybe I couldn't get everybody that I wanted to come to the event for travel reasons, because of cost issues, because of scheduling issues, right? So I got these, very high level folks. They're very busy. It's tough to get a moment on their calendar, let alone 2 days, because of all the travel involved to get them to my venue and back, right? Absolutely. Now, if we can create a high-level virtual meeting, not only can we get the presenters to definitely check in, we can get folks from places on the continent that would have been extremely difficult, cost challenges, logistical challenges. So now I can do an event in my basement in New York that, can attract folks from Africa, Australia, China, South America. The guy that's sitting in a vehicle in Antarctica that's got some good Wi-Fi signal, right? We can get all of these people together from a scientific, from a business, from a personal and social angle. It allows for an amazing opportunity, and for an event that may have suffered on the end of getting sponsorship and getting enough attention because maybe they didn't have enough ability to attract attendees. That problem goes out the window. Now it's just about, how do we host everybody? How do we bring the sponsors to the table? Because we know we can get the people. We know that it's accessible.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, the sense of community is what we all are looking for and what we all want. And the whole thing about the concerts and what's going on is really key. And we have to say there's a lot of venture capitalists coming into this market right now. They are putting money into virtual. There's new platforms coming out. So this is just going to get better and better. And I give a shout out to Peter Shapiro, who owns the Brooklyn Bowl and the Capitol Theater here in Portchester. They did the opening of the Nashville Brooklyn Bowl maybe last week or the week before. And, nobody could be there because obviously we're in lockdown, but they had everybody on Zoom. And so the band was playing to an empty place, but on the TV screen were all the people in the different boxes from Zoom all over the place. So when they finished singing, everybody could cheer, scream, and applaud. Plus, they could see them dancing in their living rooms and things like that. So again, there's that engagement. People are there. They want this. They're driving this. And like you said, just because it's in Nashville doesn't mean that somebody in Africa or Europe or Asia can't watch it and enjoy it just as much as someone else. So there's definitely that sense of community that is growing more and more. And this technology is just going to get better and better at that. And I think as we get into the newer norm in the future, when it's hybrid events, is how do we get those people that are virtual to engage with the people that are in person? How do we build that sense of community? And that's really the future of virtual events, is being able to build that community from virtual and with those that are live, so that it feels like it's one event and one community.
I've seen some successful things done. 10 years ago, we were working with event profs on Twitter, and we created all of the event camp events. Are you familiar with those at all?
A little bit, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we did things, where, using strategies like gamification and doing separate meetings. So you have live events taking place simultaneously in different parts of the world. And then you brought those folks together for small moments in the live event setting so that they could talk to each other. I've also seen, through news articles, I haven't really experienced it in a very, sticky kind of way where I was like, wow, this is an experience that I want to repeat. But you see all these things using sort of technology to sort of host a person that is attending the meeting online. So they have a hologram or a screen, and that person can even walk the halls in some cases. So it's this robot that's walking around and doing that virtual sort of presentation of the person that is attending virtually. Have you seen anything that is sort of sticky to you that you think might be where that is going in terms of the virtual hybrid event?
I mean, I definitely see things like holograms becoming very popular because, again, that capability is we can Zoom people, not to use that word, but we can move people wherever we want them to be. And you could have different people on a stage together, even though they're in different locations through the hologram. So instead of, flying, if it's a big event, you might have Bill Gates and you might have, some other folks. They don't have to come together. They can be in their living rooms or their offices, and you can then, through the hologram or through the technology, have them be together in the same place so that they are together.
I love it. I think there's some stuff around like digital mapping too, where I think it's going to be interesting because that technology is becoming much lower cost, so that you could actually have people being broadcast in a virtual format on the edges of a conference room or even a larger event space because of the ways that they're able to project now and project images. Mm-hmm. So instead of, we're using StreamYard today to cast this, or, everybody's familiar with Zoom, I think, or whether Google Meet, but basically being able to cast people onto the walls of events so that they're watching the performance and they're physically present in one way or another in the room. I think that's going to become easier to be done. When we talk holograms, the most famous event an experience that I know of is when at South by Southwest, they projected a hologram of the late Tupac Shakur, and he actually performed posthumously from the stage with other entertainers up there, and did it in a way that, basically, people were engaged with. So I think that, it's still a while before it's affordable for, the rest of us, but for on a very high end kind of level, having somebody, I know Gary Vee is definitely, attended and spoken at an event via hologram. It's going to become more commonplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned before, as more and more money comes into this business, into this area, the technology is going to get better and better. I mean, as we know, when things are tough, people step up and develop new technologies and new businesses, and new things are going to happen. I mean, who would have thought 6 months ago that we would do curbside pickup or touchless pickup today? And now it's a fairly big business. And it's the same thing here. Who would have thought that virtual technology would all of a sudden become the norm, and that we are doing this every day? And all of a sudden people are scrambling to become virtual technologists so that they understand what's going on. So
I love that you're mentioning this, because anybody that sort of placed themselves in this space, now you look at somebody like Zoom, and it's sort of interesting because, you were talking about, the fact that Zoom has become a verb in the dialogue, in the language, but there were other Zooming or other video broadcasting platforms before. There was other virtual meeting platforms. Skype. Where did Skype go?
Go to meeting, WebEx,
Google, Cisco, right? So all these folks, why aren't they predominant? Now, I think we know the reason, because Zoom just works, and it works well, and it allows a whole bunch of different options. You don't need to have a subscription. It's free for most folks that are using it. At the same time, for those that purchase in, the ability to host breakouts, the ability to actually utilize the platform's live streaming on Facebook, it just works. I think it's a really interesting case study, because if you're an event planner, if you're a company, if you're a professional, and you were set up for this before pandemic, you're doing well now.
Yeah. And look, no question about it, Zoom is a fantastic platform. It's very simple and, like you said, easy to use. And what's great about Zoom is it's almost plug and play. You sign up, you get there, send emails out, and you're in a meeting. Where some of the others may require a little more IT, a little more security. And I think that's something else we have to look at too. And, Zoom did have a little problem earlier on with security, and they've corrected that. But, I think when you're talking sensitive information, you may want to have a little bit more security. And some of these other platforms that are more sophisticated, yes, they may require a production company or production team to help you implement, but they're going to provide more of that security, more of that technology, more of the things that you need to do. So, for example, the other day, I saw a webinar with Alex Lindsay, who used to do live streaming, virtual programming for the president and the Pope, and how they set all that up, because you're only allowed to have one, maybe two people in the room. So they had to do everything outside. They had to have production trucks, and they're beaming this all over the world. So just like a TV production, just like a movie production, or just like an event production, you had to have these technicians in these trucks taking that stream and making sure that it worked flawlessly. And not that Zoom wouldn't do that, but I don't think Zoom has the technology to go like really deep and really intense.
Now, if the folks from Zoom are paying any attention, they got to be better about reaching out to event professionals. I know their team is really busy. And so this is like the negative side of it. Are you prepared for success? Are you prepared to scale your business? Are you prepared to jump into all the opportunities that your company can once success hits? I think, for event planners that are putting out a great event, are you prepared for the 30,000 people that could sign up
Mm-hmm.
to sign up? And how are you going to satisfy that? How are you going to take care of them? How are you going to personally engage with each attendee so that you can make it an annual thing and make sure that sponsors are really happy with what you're doing, as well as the participants who are going to patron the sponsors, right? I think that's key.
And Zoom is really good at all of that, right? I mean, and I'm putting Zoom down because I have an account. I love it and I use it all the time. It's really easy, and we use it for the MPI Lunch Bunch. It's a great way for us to do simple breakouts and to make it happen rather easy, right? But as soon as you start,
but I also have criticisms of Zoom. The chat sucks.
mm-hmm.
Right? It's not a great chat system. It's very basic. It doesn't allow for interesting dialogue like that happens on Facebook when you have a really active and participant-driven session. I think they can improve in so many different ways. One of the things that sort of frustrates me as I put people into breakouts, the chat box changes. You can't do a full-scale chat. It's sort of it's so weird in so many ways on the chat box level. And then there's functionality things that they could improve. So there's always room for improvement in any platform. But I don't want to get too deep in the weeds. I would like to come back to some of the things that we stated that we would take care of in terms of learning points here. So understand how to plan a virtual meeting. And then I do want to kind of walk through some of the tools to familiarize people that maybe not are familiar with some of the platforms that we're familiar with. So in setting up a virtual meeting, real briefly, what are you got your why, why you're getting into this. What are some points that you would make sure or people or companies that you would make sure that are a part of your planning process? How would you put together a virtual meeting?
Yeah, so I would put together all of my needs. I'd create a list, everything that I need for my meeting, right? So is it breakouts? Is it networking sessions? Is the chat feature important? Interactivity? All of these different things that I want to do, right? And I'd put that together in a list, and then I'd start to talk to different companies. And we can, like I said, we mentioned that list of about 70 companies that we can post, but then you start to look through and say, okay, I go to On24 or Socio events, and I go through their session, and I listen and I ask the questions. Can you do this, 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 and this? The other thing is, you need to kind of not only get references, but find out how long they've been in business, right? If they're relatively new, doesn't mean that they're bad, but they're relatively new and they don't have a lot of that experience in actual production, where some of these that have been around for 15 years now have a lot more expertise and kind of have lived through it and know what's going on. But I think you need to put together your wish list of what you want and prioritize what's most important, because certain companies are going to be better at the chat feature than others may be better at the video feature or the breakout feature. So I think you really got to define what that is, and then go to the different companies with your RFP that pretty much says, this is what we'd like. Please, respond. Can you handle it? And then go through their process, their program, and see if it actually works.
I love that. I know Brian Fonzo was somebody that you mentioned, so I'll drop that link into the chats as a place to go for some information on. He's got a ton of stuff on here, and I saw him at the hacking conference that I think Apiro put on. I think I got that right, and that was amazing. One of the things that I think is really important with what you're saying is, what is the ability for that company to respond to your needs?
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough for them to have a great platform. Or are you able to talk to somebody?
Right. I mean, customer service is critical. Like on the day of the event, you need to have somebody at that on that platform who you can reach out to. And I think, you set up your communications room just like you would any other event, right? You have people from your various teams that are either online or in a room where if something goes wrong, this person's my responsibility. So if I'm working with a particular platform, I want to have that person online with me at all times during that event to make sure that if something goes wrong, I can find out what the story is, and have that backup plan as well. Your crisis management plan. What happens if the internet goes out or if the program goes down and you have a black screen? What do you need to do to talk to people?
Absolutely. I love the idea too. And we've definitely floated this, but having multiple live events in conjunction with your events, so that that's the ultimate backup, is like you're not dependent on just this live stream. Like you can have folks. So I think having multiple backup plans to make sure, especially if you're doing something that is involving a lot of people, that is hosting a lot of people, God forbid, the electric grid goes down or something like that. You plan for months. What is your background plan? How are you going to engage your attendees? How are you going to take care of folks? Having those pieces in place, I think, is a critical part of the planning process.
And I think in addition to the customer service, you should have the backup, right? Pre-record. Each person who's going to present should pre-record, and you have it as a backup. Or in some cases, and I was at one last week where the session was actually recorded. So the speaker was recorded. They played that, and then afterwards there was a live Q&A with the speaker.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it solves a lot of issues. We did the program, the MPI Lunch Bunch, where we had a live performance, and my suggestion to the performers afterwards was pre-record your session just before you go on live. That way it's in the same space, the same clothing, it's the same setting. Mm-hmm. It looks live.
Yeah.
And it was live. It's not a lie. It's, we did it moments before, but that way you control the audio, right? Mm-hmm. Especially on the Zoom platform. Again, another criticism of Zoom, even though we're utilizing Zoom more than anything else, just because you use it all the time doesn't mean that it's perfect. Just because I'm married to somebody doesn't make them perfect, right? There's always room for improvement, right?
I hope she's not listening.
I love my wife. There's things that I definitely need to improve about me. It's just real talk, right? Mm-hmm. So, in terms of whatever you're utilizing, there's always room for improvement. But the idea that when you're working with Zoom, the audio is going to possibly cut in and out, either because of the nature of live stream or because of the nature of the way the audio works in Zoom, trading back and forth from anybody that's not muted.
Well, the other side to that is everyone's got a different microphone or, in a different system. And that's why some of these other programs, are different, because they will bring everything into a control room.
Right.
And they will monitor it there. And just like they would in a live event or a production house, they'll manage and make it sound consistent.
I want to get into the platforms and just show off a few of the different platforms so people can see that. But right before we get into that, when during the planning process should an event planner say, what, maybe we shouldn't have the presenter presenting from their home, or at least not from their setup, that we need to bring some more production? At what point should somebody make that decision? What budget, what reason takes it from, okay, this is not okay to do from somebody's desk?
Well, I think that starts in the planning process, right? That's part of your why, what, when, and how, right? So people have to understand that, and I think the other side of this too is, a couple of weeks beforehand, you can get those speakers online and you can start to see what their background looks like, so that if you do need to send something, you can. The other thing is the MC should be part of the planning from the start. As soon as you can get the MC involved, then that MC can see everything, can understand what's going on, and make recommendations as well. So if you do a rehearsal and you see that somebody's in a dark room, or, and you have to remember the time of day too. I'm sitting next to a window. The sun's not shining right now, but if it was, it might be really bright on my right side and my left side could be dark. So you got to look at all those different things and determine what's going to be right. And if you do that 2 weeks before, there's enough time to send a green screen, to send lights, to send speakers. And you may decide to do that early on just for, again, consistency, because if you have a high quality event, you want to have that everyone looking and sounding the same. So being able to do that and send that out, again, not at a very large expense, and afterwards they just pack it up and send it back to you.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the platforms. These are basically tools. Again, you want to understand your why. You want to understand what you want to happen. You don't want the tool to direct your meeting. You want your meeting to direct the tools that you're using. What are some tools that you like and why? What are some platforms that you like and why?
Well, gosh, I mean, there's so many different ones. The thing I like about Socio, I mean, again, pluses and minuses, but they have a really good social capability, and what I liked about that is the ability to engage, have communication. They've been around for 15 years, so they kind of have seen what's been going on, and they've changed and updated their programs. Again, it works on mobile as well as on your screen, and they also can work with other apps, which I think is critical, right? You can have an event app, or you can use their app as well to help combine, because the platform is going to be the part that delivers, but the event app is really where a lot of the community and the engagement is going to happen. In addition, so the two have to be connected. And I think that's really good.
Key. And one of the things I just want to bring up for folks is, the importance of an app versus a web-based, browser-based platform. You do need to make a decision whether you want something that's going to operate from an app. I think one of the advantages with Zoom is that they both operates from the browser. So you can watch Zoom within a browser, so somebody doesn't need to install something. But especially for me, who I'm hosting multiple Zoom meetings a week, and I need the breakout, it is an app. I am able to move things across my 2-screen setup so that I can manage it. And I know I've had that conversation multiple times and talking to folks on the platform side. Well, can I actually, because I'm trying to manage these meetings, I know how difficult it is. Can I put the chat box over here? Can I put, the participant thing over here? Can I move things around, or am I stuck all on one screen all the time? So that's one of the limitations if you don't have an app. And so many people digest their content using multiple screens now.
Right.
So
right.
They may want to participate in the meeting, but they may want to take a photo of the meeting with their phone. Is your platform allowing for you to create that type of engagement with your event? If you're wanting a part of your event strategy to be gamification, you're probably going to want an event platform that is at least what's the word, compatible, that you could at least bring it in and integrate with it.
Your key word was web-based, right? I mean, you don't want to be having apps on your phone, because we have so many apps right now and it could get lost. And I think that's really important. And, then you look at a lot of these larger programs, and I've been involved in a couple of virtual trade shows right now. And, On24, Big Marker, they're really good at those, right? Where they can have the plenary sessions, they can have the breakout rooms, they can have the trade show floor and the poster sessions. So they're all different areas, and you enter into a lobby where you can then click on whatever you want. And I think that really makes a lot of sense and is really helpful for companies that are trying to do this, whether it's a trade show or just a multifaceted event. So I think that's really good. And you
said On24, and what was the other one you mentioned?
Big Marker.
Oh, that's right. Hold on, I'll bring that up.
But I mean, again, it's hard to say what's the best, because again, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish and how you're trying to accomplish. So I can't.
I would just speak to what you like about them.
Yeah.
I think, again, you're going back to, you want to understand why you're getting into it first. All of these have some drastic differences in pricing, so you got to figure out what your budget is.
That's right.
That's going to be a big deal. And then once you understand your why and you understand the details of your meeting, then you can start looking at some of these platforms. But I think the value of us sort of showing off some of these platforms is there's so many of them right now, you don't even know where to start as an event planner. What is offered, what is available, what are some of the tools and different bells and whistles that some of these things offer.
Exactly. And we could go on and on and on, because each one has great things, and some have limitations as well. And I think, the key for you all out there listening is to really take some time to go through some of their demos and see what they're like, and just get a sense for it. And if you just see one or two, you'll start to get a sense for what they're talking about and what their strengths are.
Yeah, I love that. I think also, you're a virtual specialist, John, reaching out to professionals like yourself. Obviously, you're not the only one out there, but if you're watching this now or later, understanding that you can reach out to John. He has familiarity with a lot of these websites and tools. Rhinebrook Events, a company that I work with, Sarah Weiss, Marissa Swartz, myself, Kate Wasserman. We have been diving since the beginning, and I wish we could say that we were knee deep in platforms before all this started, before March. But since March, we've been diving every week into one virtual platform demo after another. We have participated in these virtual meetings. So you can use the knowledge of folks that have been doing that deep dive to sort of speed up the learning curve for yourself. So contact John, contact somebody that's in this industry that's looking at it. I threw Brian Fonzo's website into the comments down below. Definitely check out his stuff. He's putting out a ton of content on it. You don't have to start at square zero with any of this. You can sort of save some time. Not to say that you shouldn't go out and check out some demos, but I know it can be overwhelming if you feel like you got to tackle 12.
Yeah, and I will say that that's a lot of what I've been pivoting myself as well, is the same thing, is learning a lot. I'm actually getting a certificate in virtual meetings. That will be coming probably next week after I take my exam. And the bottom line is I can help companies kind of go through this and help them kind of manage this. I'm not trying to take the business away. I'm trying to help be the consultant, someone who can help drive this and help you improve your efficiencies and improve your ROI. And the key thing here is, don't forget in all this is making sure you can get the right analytics from the company. So whoever you're using, they have to be able to provide the analytics you need, so you can then bring that back and justify what you're doing and prove the value of your events and ultimately grow your events.
I love that. Yeah. All right. So I want to wrap this up. It's been fun, and I feel like we could talk about this for a couple more hours. It's really interesting stuff. There's a ton of platforms out there. John, how can folks get in touch with you? And then I don't know if there's any kind of closing comments that you want to share on doing events virtually, but I'd love to hear that.
Sure. So my website is www.growyourevents.com. Straightforward. You can reach me at John, Jon, no H, Jon at growyourevents.com. So there's my website right there. And I'm happy to have a conversation. I'm passionate about this, and I think it's great. And I think when it comes to closing remarks, I think, you got to realize that, planning is really the critical part here. More so than ever before, we need to build a proper strategy that helps support business objectives. What does the CEO want the company to accomplish? Is it building relationships? Is it increasing profit margins? Is it, there may be some things we can't control, but for the most part, our events need to help support those ultimate goals. So let's plan, right? That's the, sort of the why, what, when, and how. Let's collect the data, right? Let's make sure that we have that capability. Let's make sure we analyze that data. And then we have to optimize the results by telling everybody what the success was and why this program was successful and why we should continue to do it again. Or if it's not successful, then perhaps maybe we need to rethink what we're doing and do something different.
I love that. I just put your LinkedIn
Yeah, that would be Jonathan.Lese.
Yep, I just put your
Oh,
LinkedIn link into the comment section so people can connect with you there.
great.
This is great, John. I know we got some more stuff coming up where we're going to be collaborating, working together. For event professionals that are checking this out, please send me an email or a comment, and we'll get you onto the mailing list for our weekly MPI Westfield Lunch Bunch presentations that we do every Wednesday at 12. They're really valuable in terms of engagement. What we try to do there is these intense breakout sessions where you're with 2 or 3 people together and you're really doing a deep dive and getting to know people. That's how we've created engagement on the social networking side of virtual meetings. That's really important. If you're looking at doing a large meeting format, it's a great way to learn how to connect people in sort of a social cocktail hour kind of situation. Since we can't do that live and we can't have the drinks and the high boys and all that right now, we can do it online and really connect people. I really thank you for tuning in, John. Thank you for doing this. Again, reach out to John if you're looking for ways to grow your events, ways to take your events virtual. He's a pro. I really recommend him. Thanks, John. I'm going to let you say goodbye to everybody.
Thanks all. Please reach out. Look forward to having a chat. I'd love to talk about this and love to see everybody prove value and justify their events and grow their events so that they're successful. My job is to make you guys look good. So hopefully you'll engage me and we can make things happen. Thanks.
All right, John, hang out for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe and hit that like button. We appreciate you.